Welcome back to Breakfast. After months of stuttering ceasefire talks, Israel and Hamas are once again edging closer to a truce deal. Just yesterday, the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution demanding a permanent end to the 8-month war. Now there's massive pressure on both sides to take up the US-backed deal, which would eventually see all hostages freed and Israel completely withdraw from Gaza. For more, we're joined now by...
Hamas no longer is capable of carrying out another October 7th. It's one of the Israelis' main objectives in this war, and quite frankly, a righteous one. I know there are those in Israel who will not agree with this plan and will call for the war to continue indefinitely. Well, I've urged the leadership in Israel to stand behind this deal, despite whatever pressure comes.
For more, we're joined now by Middle East analyst Laura Blumenfeld. Thank you so much for your time this morning. What are the details of this proposed ceasefire?
Well, look, it's ceasefire fever in Washington, D.C. It's a 3-stage proposal put out by President Biden. As one experienced Middle East negotiator said, the only kind of deals that work are one-point deals. So we'll see if we can get there. We've got the fever. Has it caught on in the region? I think we're likely looking at a yes, but. The but is about the details. And as they say, the God, or in this case, the devil, is in the details.
It's been, 10 days now? What is the likelihood of this actually materialising? I feel like we've been saying the same thing for weeks. We're getting closer to a deal, but nothing, of course.
Well, I'll tell you why it's been so hard. There are 3 challenges, although I do see one opportunity to move this forward. The first is that the 2 leaders are pretty hard line, the Hamas leader and Prime Minister Netanyahu, and they're using absolutist terms. It's a permanent ceasefire that Hamas is looking for and total victory, which is what Netanyahu is calling for. Look, any circle can be squared with a certain amount of squinting, and typically ambiguity gives diplomats room to maneuver. The question is, can we all sort of agree to fuzz up the horizon, the future details, in order to get to that first stage? That first stage is where we'll release hostages, which is everyone, the whole world can agree, including the UN Security Council, that we need to get to. The second reason why it's complicated and harder than usual, it is so public. These negotiations. Yeah. As Secretary of State Madeleine Albright once said, negotiations are like mushrooms, they do well in the dark. And this has been in the bright, blazing light of the media, of the world. It's kind of a high noon negotiation. So everything is public. I worked in the State Department on the Israeli-Palestinian negotiating team under President Obama, and we spent 3 days haggling over a comma. So you can imagine with this kind of life or death decisions and terms, how hard it is to be negotiated in public. And the third thing is about timing. To be quite honest, the only one who seems to be in a hurry is the United States. It doesn't seem like either party is really motivated to put this to an end. Again, because typically negotiations are a pain-gain trade-off, but here the pain is pain of death. For Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, it's his literal death. And for Netanyahu, it's political death.
You mentioned the US and how they want the expediency in this. This is what Antony Blinken's 8th trip there in recent months. How much of a spotlight does that put on it? Is it helpful that he's there so often?
I think it's the only way that we have an opportunity to move forward. Look, he got off the plane, his tie was askew. He's one of the most smoothest diplomats, and just to see that tells you where we are. But look, he's there to put forward all the usual US priorities, hostages, de-escalation of a regional crisis, increasing humanitarian aid, and a day-after plan. But most important, there's been this domestic political shakeup among the Israeli cabinet members. And I think he's just kind of taking his gauge of Netanyahu. Where is he now? Every trip has had a different kind of body language. The first was a hug. Then there was kind of a businessman handshake. And then there was even a little bit of a slap on the wrist with withholding weapons. I think what we're looking at now behind closed doors is a kind of arm wrestle, not literally, but sort of a diplomatic a war of wills between the United States and Israel. Is Israel ready to make the kind of concessions that will take to bring us to that ceasefire? Because I think the red line that President Biden set down in Rafah turned out to be America's finish line. What America is saying now is it's over. And it's significant because that kind of private proposal for a ceasefire that Netanyahu sent to the United States, America hit reply all. It's all now out in the public. And our hope is that we can kind of bring it forward and bring it across that finish line.
Of course, innocent people are dying still every day. The latest hostage rescue that occurred at the weekend, many more people still dying there. How does that add pressure to the situation?
Well, I think it does help move Israel toward the concessions that are necessary. First of all, it gave Israel a little bit of that kind of reassertion of its deterrent power. I heard one very veteran Israeli official, military official, say Israel is back. Again, Israel's kind of regaining that kind of high ground, which they'll need to save face in order to make concessions. The second thing is it brought the faces of the hostages to the top of our inbox. It reminded us of how human and how important it was for the Israeli public to pressure their leaders to make the concessions again to bring this war to an end. Hamas, on the other hand, they could harden their position. They can say that they've lost kind of face, and it's better for them, frankly, to have their own civilians dying because it delegitimizes Israel. I do think on balance, though, it is a good thing.
Yeah, it's so complicated. Laura Blumenfeld, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.